Okay, so we've got the left-hand side sorted, but we need stuff to go on the right-hand side. And we'll display a tabbed content area. And to display some tabs, we're going to use Angular Bootstrap for this. And what we're going to utilize is tabs. And if we go and take a look at the examples here, then we have effectively tabbed content. And sure, this is what we're going for. So that each area, users that are viewing this profile, they can select to view their profile, they can look at their photos, they can look at their messages, etc. So let's go and deal with that. And if we take a look at the documentation for this and the API, then we're going to need to add something, of course, into our component. And I'm just going to copy the import here from the documentation. Please don't use this command. It's not going to do anything for you, and you don't need to use it because we already installed NGX Bootstrap globally into our project earlier. So let's head back to VS Code and deal with this. So we're going to need to open up our member detail components. And inside this component, let's just add the import I have in my clipboard for the tabs module, just in case it doesn't import directly. And we're going to add that to our imports in here. So we're going to say tabs module. And now we have access to tab functionality inside our template. So inside here, just below the div with a column of 4, and this is a recent addition to VS Code. That's quite useful actually, because it keeps the top contents overlaying the bottom one, and I need to be in the div directly below column number 4, and that's quite easy to see just by scrolling up. I can target the correct div quite easily now. Well done, VS Code. That's actually quite useful. So below the div with the column of 4, then I'm going to need a div that's going to take up the remaining space. And Bootstrap uses a 12-column grid. So I'm going to say col-12 to take up the right-hand side content. In fact, no, I don't. I had 12 in my brain when I was talking about a 12-column grid. We need an 8-column grid, because 4 plus 8, of course, equals 12. And we're going to use a tab set. And this is the Bootstrap component we're using, so that doesn't work. I need to use tab sets, like so. And we're going to give this a class, and I'm going to call it member tabs. Now, when it comes to styling this particular component, then NGX Bootstrap uses encapsulation for its styles, and we're not able to target any of its classes and override them inside this component. The only way that we can override them is to use a global style sheet. So we'll add the content, we'll see how it looks, and then we'll add some styling afterwards. But like I say, we're going to need to utilize this class and target it from a global style sheet rather than using the member detail component style sheet. So inside a tab set goes tabs. So I'm going to say tab and add its closing tag, and we'll give our tab a heading, and I'm going to say about and then use interpolation and say member known as. And inside here I'm going to have an h4 and say description and a paragraph and say member.introduction. And below this paragraph, I'm going to add another h4 and say looking for, and then the next paragraph, I'm going to say member.looking for. And in the next tab, we'll add another one, and yeah, I'm going to need to do it like this because the emit doesn't work for this particular component. And when I say emit, I'm talking about this kind of functionality where I type in div, and this is known as an emit abbreviation, which means I can just tab. It doesn't work for this because it's an Angular component. So I'm going to give this one a heading of interests, and I'm just going to copy this h4 and paragraph so we keep similar styling, but instead of the description, I'm just going to say interests and swap introduction for interests. And then I'm just going to copy this tab again and paste it below. And this one's going to be for photos. And we don't have the facility to do this yet, so I'm just going to add a paragraph and say photos will go here. And then I'll just copy this tab down and we'll give this one a heading of messages and swap photos, because again we don't have this functionality yet either. I'm just going to say messages will go here. And if we go and take a look at our progress and take a look at our detail page, then we have our different tabs. We've got our description, looking for. If I click on interests, I see interests. If I click on photos and messages, we have our tab functionality working. I would like to adjust the styling a little bit though. And the styling for this is annoying to type, and there's a little bit of it. So inside the student assets folder and inside the snippets, then we've got a membertabs.css, and if we click on this, then this has a bunch of styles that will copy into the clipboard, and we'll go back to VS Code, and we need to add this to our styles.css inside our source folder. So inside here we can add global styles to this file, and I'm just going to paste in what I have from my clipboard. So I have provided this as a snippet rather than something that we're all going to type out manually, because that would be beyond tedious. And there isn't really a huge amount of benefit for this because the styling changes are quite subtle, and so subtle they look incorrect in fact. And let's just go back to the member detail component, and this should be tab set rather than tabs, because in the style sheet that's the class I'm targeting inside there. So that should be member tab set, and if I go take a look, that's a bit more like it. We should see the orange underline with the tab we're selecting, and sure, not a huge change for all of those different styles, but it is a change. And for certain components that you might use that are third party, you may have to take that approach to styling them, because you can't target the individual elements inside the component due to encapsulation that we talked about earlier. But now we have our tabs and our content on the right hand side, and what we'll take a look at next is doing something with the photos, and we'll take a look at adding a gallery component into this one.